Hi, I'm Toto Oliveira. I'm a professor at the University of Utah, and I'd like to tell you about venomous cone snails. So you've heard about predators, and it's seldom that you think of a snail as a predator. You think of snails that are crawling around in your garden. But I'm going to tell you about a special group of snails called cone snails. And they are predators. And predators vary from those that use mechanical strategies, such as a great white shark. You have to be able to swim fast and have great teeth if you're a white shark, to predators that have a mixed mechanical and chemical strategies, such as the Komodo dragon, which has very strong jaws, but nevertheless it has secretions that allow it to help capture its prey, to the cone snails, which are in fact predators as well, but they use a purely chemical strategy, and that makes them fairly unique as predators. So there are 700 different types of cone snails species, and all of them are predatory, all of them are venomous, and each species has fairly specific prey. Some cone snails prey on fish, some cone snails prey on marine worms, and some cone snails prey on other snails. All of them live in the tropics, in the oceans, from very shallow water to really deep water. And the most unusual kinds of snails are those that hunt fish, because they not only are successful hunters of fish, but a few species are dangerous to man and can kill people. And Conus georgaphus, which is the snail in the center, the large snail in the center, kills people with a 70% fatality rate. So if you get stung by this snail and you have no medical attention, you have a 70% probability of dying. Let me show you what the cone snails do to catch fish. So when a cone snail sniffs a fish, it extends its distensible proboscis, as you see here, and this particular species goes for a region of the fish called the lateral line, which has lots of nerves. And what you can see is the snail beginning to approach the fish. And when it touches the skin of a fish, then from the proboscis out comes a harpoon-like tooth, which is both harpoon and hypodermic needle. And so what you see is the tooth extended, and the venom flows from the proboscis to the tooth. And at the end of the tooth is a hole because it's hollow. And so when this tooth gets injected into a fish, the venom flows into the body of the fish. And at the same time, it's speared because, in fact, the end of the tooth is shaped like a harpoon. So once the snail touches the skin of a fish, it then can inject its venom, and the effects are what you're going to see here. It tethers the fish, and now it can draw the fish into its false mouth, and in this case, in about an hour and a half, it will regurgitate the scales and bones of the fish, as well as the one harpoon that it used for injecting the venom into the fish. And so what you can see is the fish is immobilized, and now the snail can completely engulf the fish in this false mouth, and a pre-digestion takes place so that all the hard parts get regurgitated while the soft parts of the fish go further down into the digestive tract. And what you can see is that the fish has very, very stiff fins, and that's one of the effects of the venom to cause this so-called tetanic paralysis. All cone snails have the same venom apparatus. They have an organ filled with harpoons that are in various stages of assembly, which is a quiver-like organ. And when they go hunting, they move one of the harpoons to the tip of their proboscis, and they use it only once. And the venom is actually made in this long duct, and it's pushed out by the muscular bulb. And as a result, this is an efficient way to inject venom into the prey. So the snails, in effect, have evolved the equivalent of disposable hypodermic needles for injecting their venom into their prey. Here is another snail that's hunting snails instead of fish, and it's going to inject its venom. And when it injects its venom, you can see that the behavior of the prey snail changes immediately. And so because the venom has this effect on the snail can't move away, and at the same time, it can't go into its shell. And so now the predator can eat it at its leisure. What's interesting about snail hunting cones is they usually have to harpoon their prey many times, and that's so that the muscles that attach the snail to the shell become relaxed, and it's easier to pick out the snail. This shows you a video that really shows how fast the immobilization can be with a good strike. And this is real time, and you can see the fish is instantly immobilized. And this also shows you an interesting thing that was completely unexpected. As the snail begins to engulf the fish, what you're going to see is that the fish, in fact, recovers. And so sometimes the venom is effective, but there are lapses. And so you see the fish recovers there. In this case, of course, it has no biological effect because the snail has already completely engulfed the fish. But once in a while, we've seen these fish escape. And under those conditions, the snail always does a search for a paralyzed fish. Here's another strategy for catching fish. There's another group of cone snails. These guys, when they're close to a fish, they open their mouths. And this species, the tulip cone, has frills at the end of its mouth. And what they do is they always engulf the fish first, and only when they've engulfed the fish do they harpoon their prey. And so it's a different way of catching a fish. We call this the net strategy.